You ready for more Russell Wilson trade talk? Are you ready?
This is the final twist of it, isn't it? Like, this is the final twist of the cycle that started with, because at no point in any of this has anyone really thought he's going to be traded.
Correct.
Right? Like, it's almost been like, well, this could show you how he might get traded a year from now. At no point has anyone thought that there's actually a chance that he gets traded for the 2021 season.
100%.
But we're now at the point where it started with, how did it start? Oh, it started with teams had called about him. Not even that the Seahawks had asked anyone. And then it went to Dan Patrick asking Russell, are you available? And Russell saying that's more of a Seahawks question, right?
Correct.
And then it was Russ is mad at the protection. He's frustrated at getting hit too much. And then was there another step after that?
A bunch of Colin Cowherd sound bites that have
that's right. That's
likely
right.
been provided by Mark Rodgers.
The Seahawks didn't appreciate Russell, right? Like
Yes.
that was the next step. Like they have the guy that everybody else wants, and for some reason they won't protect him and won't listen to him. That's the full cycle that we've gotten. And now we're at the what would it take to trade for Russell Wilson in a trade the Seahawks would never agree to.
Well, friend of the program, Mike Silver,
Love Mike Silver.
on the NFL Network had this to say about how a Russell Wilson trade conversation could start.
I think, chances are it'll get patched up, but that hasn't stopped a lot of teams from reaching out and from talking about this, and you kind of hear that 3 number ones being tossed around the league a little. So we'll be keeping an eye on this, obviously, in the coming weeks.
I've been getting a lot of phone calls, Danny, over the last, 3 weeks about how my auto warranty is expiring, so picking up the phone shouldn't be a story. I'm not leading every single day of Danny and Gallant by talking about how Susie wants me to make sure I'm extending my auto warranty, but that's essentially what's taking place right now, is that's the Seahawks are getting calls.
Paul, solid reference. That's great. Like, yeah, you weren't entertaining any of those.
Nope.
And it's like, I guess if someone called and said, we'll give you the same auto insurance you pay $100 a month for $5, then
great.
you might consider trading, but it's not like you're actually out there soliciting offers.
Right. I'm pretty sure these people just want to steal my identity, too. And that's what, honestly, these teams are trying to do with Russell Wilson. If they're making this phone call, they're trying to steal a good quarterback away by not having to trade that much. 3 first-round picks, okay, that's, I guess, the starting point. Should this conversation actually be anything more than going straight to voicemail? My friend Nick Wright, however, has been on a show with Brandon Marshall, who, of course, used to play for the Seattle Seahawks, and they have been talking about Russell Wilson a lot, to the point where I finally got a hold of Nick, and he's going to be on the show tomorrow in this very segment, because we got to figure out why is so many national people talking about this. But he thinks that the Seattle Seahawks need to acknowledge all of this trade conversation and say, we're not trading Russ.
I don't know, and that is now the story. The story is not that a third of the league wants Russell Wilson. Listen, let me call up Jay Glazer real quick. Jay, how many teams would trade for Russell Wilson? Oh, 27? 28? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. Jay Glazer just told me. 28 teams. There's 28 teams that would trade for Russell Wilson right now. So it's just a third is called, a third will call, and, another 6th are considering it. Brandon, why hasn't Seattle come out and said something?
The answer to that is because they didn't start any of this. And the only way to not become further embroiled into it is to not engage. Like, that's the honest reason. They didn't start it. They didn't offer him in a trade. They're not interested in trading. They haven't considered trading. And to address it is to acknowledge that or imply that some of that has happened. And that there's, what's the upside? What's to gain? So that talk shows won't speak about it? That's a terrible incentive. Honestly, like, that's a terrible incentive, because you're worried that your quarterback actually thinks you're going to – he has a no-trade clause. Like, there's the idea that this is entirely for public appearances, that you would do that. And quite honestly, I think Seattle's right not to do it. And I think if they were asked about it at the scouting combine like they normally would, but like, no, we're not really. No, we're not interested in that. We haven't considered that.
And that's the other part. There's no scouting combine press conference. So we're not hearing from Pete Carroll. We're not hearing from John Schneider. They haven't had an availability. And I suppose that the theory is now, okay, the Seahawks should hold an availability and clear the air. That would be kind of weird to hold a press conference and say, hey, we're not trading Russ. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Doesn't it also make it clear that you're willing to dance along to the jig that Mark Rodgers has outlined? Like that this, in some ways, the entire ramp up. Does anybody believe that the Seahawks started any of this or have done any of this to try and either send a message to Russ or have considered trading him? Isn't this like you would be saying, okay, well, we'll play along to the tune that Mark has arranged for us and now offer our. It's like, no, you've created a spectacle and we're not going to involve ourselves in it.
Right. And you just say nothing and you let this continue. But I do think Nick made a good point when he brought up that the Green Bay Packers handled a similar situation completely differently.
Matt LaFleur was put in a similar situation more directly by Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, the GM, Brian Gutekunst, was asked about Aaron Rodgers around that same time, about would he possibly be traded, and his quote was, "Of course not." Brandon, the fact that we haven't heard that yet does lead me to believe that when they are getting these phone calls from a third of the league, there is at least one ear that is a little intrigued by it.
But he's got a no-trade clause, right? Russell has a no-trade clause. I get the point he's making about Green Bay. And maybe Seattle could. At the same time, the situation is a little different in Green Bay. It was after the season, and they've drafted a quarterback a year ago. I don't know if that was a specific media availability that was created to answer the quarterback's question. If it was, you got a point. If it was like, hey, should the Seahawks have handled it like the Packers did? I don't know that that's the case, that if that was just a general... You would have to call a press conference with the express purpose of answering the question of whether you're going to trade Russell Wilson, which honestly seems like it's something a weak franchise would do.
I agree with you there. And if we're going to compare the two situations as well, what situation is more untenable? The one where Russell Wilson has been sacked 40-plus times in every single season of his career outside of his rookie year and is frustrated with that, but the team's winning? Or is it the situation where a team that in the past has moved on from a Hall of Fame quarterback to another quarterback that they drafted in the first round has drafted a quarterback in the first round, and the quarterback is perhaps upset with the newest head coach after having been upset with the last head coach for almost a decade?
Yeah, it's probably more. At least there you can see where the Packers contributed to the sort of the uncertainty. Like, it's not like the Packers didn't do anything with the Seahawks. It's kind of, why do we have to come in and air out the room? We did not pass all the gas that's stinking this up. We were not the ones that were responsible for the stench that's currently infected. Why do we have to air it out? Why do we have to provide the fan? Can't we just not go in the room? We'd prefer to just not go in the room that you stunk up. We'd prefer to just, and at a future date we'll go in there, but we don't have to go in that room right now, so we're not going in there.
Leave it closed, duct tape the underneath of the door, put a towel on top of it as well. Yeah, let all that stank linger in there, and then we eventually move on. At least that's the hope. We're going to talk to Nick Wright about this tomorrow at 7:30 to try to get his insight on that.
He's got a point. I just wonder if the point is more based for public conversation or the actual business, which we're concerned about the public conversation. The team should be concerned about the actual business of football, and I'm not sure that addressing it publicly does the latter, and it just deals with the way we talk about it.